But back to the Bilderberg topic, increasingly all the things we see on the internet, the positive sides of the revolution, the attempts to crack down, all seem to be spiraling around the group of elites that meet each year in a new location under their secret names in fancy five-star hotels. And it's part of, we see more and more, a larger web of control through groups like Facebook and other big tech people. So many of them have started attending this conference. And kind of nexusing with that, we have the article today from our contributor A.M. Freyed, Liars or Genius? Gaga, Zuckerberg, and Obama groomed from childhood for their roles. And this is all on the heels of Facebook launching its IPO this week. They are estimating they're going to be valued at over $100 billion. Lady Gaga went to Geek Camp too. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, Google's Sergey Brin are all alumni of the Center for Talented Youth at Johns Hopkins University. Similar programs also take place, such as the Duke Talent Identification Program and others. It's kind of a mix of people with gifts for mathematical, musical, technical things, and people who just have important elite family members and how they prepare them for their role in the New World Order. In particular, this is interesting with Zuckerberg. A.M. Freyed writes, it's likely these are all lies of sorts. Zuckerberg is no genius mogul, and Facebook is more a U.S. intelligence asset than a functioning business. It's a simple formula. The power elite that wants to run the world has increasingly integrated a seamless network of testing throughout the web to help develop and identify top human youngsters, those who are symbolically facile, even verbally adept, without the additional burden of deep thinking. That's right, they want to control their little pet geniuses. It's a kind of organized crime approach to the cultivating of talent. After making their selections, elite handlers began to make the pitch. The quid pro quo is surely obvious, and monarch programs and other forms of mind control are not necessary. Most, like Zuckerberg, acquiesce willingly and do whatever is required. Of course, many of these young people mature late, and mathematical capability is not the only kind of creativity they hold. This is not an issue to the top elites. They apparently wish to select for numerical facilities, music, language, math skills, because the owners of such talents are more likely to be linear in their thought rather than holistic thinkers. The idea is to present geniuses with outward dazzling skills, but little in the way of insight or determination to investigate the realities of the larger picture. And that larger picture is coming together when you begin to study who is it that attends the Bilderberg meeting? What is their agenda? What are their related agendas? What are their conflicts of interest? We're going to get into some of that today, and throughout it, they're going to be revealing just some of the technical people who've attended Bilderberg just over the past few years. Bill Gates, probably the most notable, the already most deeply steeped in evil, but others are being brought onto this platform. And what really is at Bilderberg, just the larger cartel. That's really what they are. There's the one company. They include the NSA, they include the CIA, they include all the political fronts, and they control a great deal of the industry, the technical stuff, and a whole lot more. Now, we've heard this week about how a judge refuses to reveal the ties between the NSA and Google. We're not supposed to know that they're spying on us or that they're working together, or that Google was basically launched as a front for the NSA, CIA, and related interests. But that's all coming out. And you see Eric Schmidt attending annually at Bilderberg. He got confronted last year. And it's kind of funny, too. He thought that people wouldn't know how to speak English just because they were in Europe, but they did. He got shouted at. He didn't like it. They even had some of the videos pulled from YouTube of people confronting Eric Schmidt and the other Bilderberg attendees who got caught walking down the sidewalk. Very interesting. But back to Facebook, this week they're in the news, of course, because the IPO is about to happen. They're about to be declared as a $100 billion company, really topping anything Bill Gates did or any of these other newfound billionaires, because it's part of that larger myth of wealth. Those who have the wealth are supposedly in control. Therefore, they associate with the elite. Therefore, they pull the strings. Therefore, it's not surprising to find them influencing this and that in social media and online and our new reality, what's considered the mainstream culture they're always trying to sell. And so you see Eduardo Saverin wanting to leave the country, wanting to renounce his citizenship, but of course cash in on that IPO. Now, this guy, Eduardo Saverin, was the initial funder for Facebook when it was only tens of thousands of dollars. He was at Harvard, ran with Zuckerberg and the other founders who were all roommates there, but they didn't really like his style and they tried to push him out of the company and snag some of his different holdings, but he got it back through a lawsuit and now he has the money. But there's an interesting clip I want to play here from the movie The Social Network that'll tie us to our main focus in this piece, which is Sean Parker, the first president of Facebook, also the first launcher of Napster, which disrupted the web, and someone who looks to be an overall agent of disruption. So $1 billion, that's what's cool. When Eduardo Saverin wanted to sell off the company for a little over $1 million, people like Sean Parker convinced them to keep going forward and try to make Facebook a truly huge company. Now, the real truth is these people are just fronts for larger entities. We've seen in the past how the Rockefeller Corporation and other big entities had to break up Standard Oil, had to break up AT&T, had to break up IBM, and other true monopolies of the early part of the 20th century. They spun them, sold them, put them in side companies, but it turned out that all along control was basically with the same important people. And you see at the same time how John D. Rockefeller was himself an icon for that robber baron wealth of the early part of the 20th century. In the 21st century, in the rise of technology and the takeover of operating systems, Bill Gates was a major icon for that. And you see how much he has pushed the New World Order agenda, himself meeting very often at Bilderberg meetings along with his father and his wife and other counterparts of Microsoft and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But now that too has to grow. Companies like Facebook have to transplant the success of Microsoft. They have to top what's already been done. So now it has to be a $100 billion company. What does that money really mean? What's it based in? It doesn't matter, but they're going to be selling these new Silicon Valley figures as our saviors, as the rightful elites to control things. And that's why you see people like Sean Parker, the founders, including Zuckerberg, of Facebook being glorified, movies made about them. Again, you just saw the clip from The Social Network where he says $1 million isn't cool, $1 billion, that's what's cool. But actually, he said $1 billion isn't cool. Sean Parker, $1 billion isn't cool in the Huffington Post. One of the film sequences involves the Parker character telling the young Facebook co-founders $1 million isn't cool, you know it's cool, $1 billion. The real life Parker has a different take on wealth. It's not cool, he said, of $1 billion. I think being a wealthy member of the establishment is the antithesis of cool, he added, saying being a counterculture revolutionary is cool. So the extent that you're made $1 billion, you've probably become uncool. Well, Sean Parker, you become uncool. We have you on video attending Bilderberg in 2010, giving the victory sign, so cool, like $1 billion cool. Alex found out when I was telling him about some of the research that I do every year on Bilderberg, looking up members from the attendees list, finding out what they're up to lately, and he realized he met Sean Parker just a few months ago at a party during the South by Southwest meeting, and how crazy he was, how strange, and seemed hype up on something. We don't know what was going on. He was juggling apples and talking intently in people's faces and acting real weird, and a bunch of hangers-on were gloating about his billions and how he was about to cash in for even more when the IPO of Facebook went through. And it's just all very strange, the worship around this guy who didn't like his portrayal in The Social Network as a drug-induced playboy who's kind of wielding these new technologies. And yet, when Alex met him at the party, it really seemed like maybe he did fit this kind of super egotistical character, really reveling in his connections and wealth and total trendiness. He was there at South by Southwest, appearing with Al Gore, talking about how soap is bad and how they have to hack democracy and use social media to take over voting, and they've got all these new companies. We're about to get to that. But this guy has really made himself involved, and particularly in the Bilderberg through his connection with Peter Thiel, who's now on the Bilderberg Steering Committee and has invited so many of the founders of Facebook and other key technology companies to that elite summit. Let's roll some of those members right now. And you see just some of the invitees from the 2011 list there in detail. Craig J. Mundy, who's the Chief Research and Strategy Officer for Microsoft. But let's go back to where they show their names and faces, and we can talk about the gathering they brought together to discuss things like the future of privacy on the internet, the future of cybersecurity. There's Peter Thiel. He runs Clarium Capital. He was also the first founder of PayPal and their CEO, and he was the first major funder of Facebook. He provided the first $500,000 that would eventually turn Facebook into a multi-billion-dollar company. Next, we have Mark Zuckerberg. He and his sister were rumored to attend the Bilderberg meeting last year in St. Moritz. We can't confirm that directly, but the New American did write on the topic and said they had a meeting basically about how they learned to love the end of privacy, to accept all the NSA backdoors to Facebook and the other super technology. And you remember, it was only in the past months where it turned out Zuckerberg had referred to the early Facebook members as dumb effers for giving all their data away. And of course, he was going to use that data. You saw people like Eric Schmidt laughing about how you shouldn't do anything on the internet you don't want to do in public, and on and on. And his sister has also made a lot of outspoken comments about what a joke privacy was. And apparently they had a big confab at Bilderberg last year over the Facebook issue in particular and the future of online privacy. And it makes a lot of sense because they had at least 4 or 5 funders or key members or founders of Facebook there. We don't know if the Zuckerberg family themselves showed up, but it would certainly fit with the other information. But we know other people showed up and were on their official list. Of course, each year there are many people not on the official list. This is Chris Hughes, a co-founder of Facebook, and he was also credited as being the kid who made Obama president. How? Through social media. And we're about to get even more into that, but he helped get the list together in a 21st century high-tech way to really connect with people who might vote for the president, who might raise money for him, or who might just spread the trendy word about him. You also saw Jeff Bezos. He's the CEO of Amazon. He was at Bilderberg last year. He's running, of course, with the Peter Thiel crowd because Peter Thiel runs Clarium Capital. He runs Sequoia Capital. They run the Founders Fund. All these are important hedge fund and other funding mechanisms that decide which projects live and which projects die, which projects are going to become a multi-billion-dollar company, and which projects are just going to be prototypes for someone else to take over. You really see that going on Silicon Valley now, and they make up basically about 20% of the NASDAQ index, and that means a lot of our GDP, but it's more than just dollars. It's what is going to be the reach of social media? How impactful will they be on socially engineering society, something the elites have been working on for over 100 years. Let's go back to that list and finish off the attendees. You also saw the CEO of LinkedIn, who is also one of the Facebook founders. His name is Reid Hoffman. And then after that, you have, I think there's one other guy in there. But the point is, all these tech geeks came together at Bilderberg. The question is why. And of course, Sean Parker of Napster, the first president of Facebook, he wasn't there last year, but the past year. The point is they're there every year. Again, Peter Thiel is on the steering committee of Bilderberg and runs a lot of the finance operations on Silicon Valley. Such an important connection there. But it gets even more interesting because Sean Parker calls himself a disruptor. Forbes has the headline, Sean Parker, Agent of Disruption. Who is he? He is basically an early teen genius who learned to hack when he was just 14, 15, some odd years old, started his own companies while he was still in high school, got around some of the high school requirements so he could start doing some of his online money making. And then in Virginia, where he went to high school at none other than Chantilly High School, right over there where the Bilderberg meeting's about to be. He won the state computer science fair for developing a web crawler and was recruited by the CIA at age 16. Sean Parker, CIA, Agent of Disruption. And so as all this stuff with privacy shapes, you've got also attendees at the Bilderberg meeting, including Christine Varney, the former Obama U.S. Assistant Attorney General for Antitrust Division, now working for the tech companies to guard privacy. You've got Google in an antitrust probe, and all this stuff is building to a crescendo while Sean Parker says it's time to disrupt the elections. He says defeating SOPA was the nerd spring, the thing him and Al Gore called for at South by Southwest and in the months previous leading up to it, using the name playing off of the Arab Spring. You've got headlines here like Vodacin, social voting ready to disrupt the 2012 presidential election. You've got headlines like Sean Parker, this election, social media will determine the outcome. And it all adds together. You've got Sean Parker in this article, 5 interesting things Sean Parker said yesterday. He says, politics, for me, is the most obvious area to be disrupted by the web. Campaigns themselves and all forms of special interest groups and PACs are driven by huge amounts of cash. If you're a PAC, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to mobilize single-issue voters. Taking money out of politics with campaigns is possible through social media. Like with all the other groups, they're spending a fortune basically for maintaining a mailing list, and that can be done basically for free using online tools. There's huge potential for disruption. So there he is using the term disruption in the context of steering the elections, of hacking the elections through social media. And they're all meeting at Bilderberg, especially last year, but in the years to come, we'll see how many of them show up this year. Now, this entity right here, Vodacin, it's one of their little side projects. It connects back to Peter Thiel. It connects back to Sean Parker. It connects back to Chris Hughes and, of course, other allies and, of course, many celebrities. They're all funded by the same basic groups, Clarion Capital, Sequoia, and especially the Founders Fund, which Sean Parker now heads. Chris Hughes, who's one of the key Facebook co-founders, was credited in 2008 with helping to get President Obama elected. Here's the headline right here, how Chris Hughes helped launch Facebook and the Barack Obama campaign. And it goes on about what a great supporter Obama was, but especially how he used social media and in particular the site myBarackObama.com to connect supporters and spread support and basically get the community organizing going on. But Peter Thiel, as you know, has been reported as a major libertarian thinker and a supporter of Ron Paul. Why would someone like Peter Thiel, who goes to the Bilderberg meeting every year, back someone like Ron Paul who wants to break down the system? Well, look at the fact that Ron Paul has the only true viral internet campaign. That's the only candidate. You don't see a viral campaign for Newt Gingrich. You don't see it for Romney. You see it to a certain extent for Obama, but a lot of that is AstroTurf. Ron Paul has the true body of supporters, and what do they want? They want that data. They want to back people like Ron Paul so they can steer the social media data. They want to run it through all their sites from LinkedIn to Facebook and on, and they want to steer it, study it, and learn how they can use it in the future to truly hack elections. We're not talking about voting machine fraud, although that's still on the table. We're talking about steering the supporters to vote for who the system wants you to vote for. Ron Paul's an experiment. They're not concerned about the candidates in this cycle in particular. They're concerned about latching on to the proper trends for the real future. And so after he did Napster, but before he got to the Facebook and cybersecurity elements, he also had the company Plaxo, which was basically a viral online address book that worked alongside of in companionship with Microsoft's Outlook. And according to what I read about it, it basically would download onto users' computers, steal their contacts, and contact all those people to try to get them to join the network. Now, this company didn't really take off, and Sean Parker got kicked out of it, but they used the basis for the technology in the future successful companies, and that's just what they do. They seed all these companies, they see what grows, and they use the lessons they learn to build the projects that actually take off. And again, they're all frontmen for the larger cartel system that includes the NSA mechanisms and all the rest of it. They're running things, and they're using these tech geeks as the new heroes of wealth and power for this new age, and we must refuse them. You saw how cool Sean Parker thinks he is, not only with his billions, but waving to people from the Bilderberg car, really thinks he's made it. He's just another tool of the system. You don't have that coolness once you sell out to the cartel, Sean Parker. We'll be back after this with Yuri Masson and more on the World Bank's disgusting population control coercive methods after this.